Hi, DAshley.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Same. This is awesome. This is really exciting. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for saying yes to being on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. Where are you dialing in from?
I am actually dialing in from East Hampton, New York.
That's right.
I am hiding in the Hamptons, as I like to say, while we're in this pandemic.
Pandemic. So just for our listeners who are watching, just a reminder of sort of why I'm doing this. This is Michelle's Conversations That Matter. And my goal with the series is to really openly talk about mental health and mental well-being, to remove stigma and have just people okay with talking about the brain. We have too many people suffering in silence, and I love the idea of sharing clinicians with expertise, but also sharing storytellers, people willing to go first and tell their unique story because it humanizes mental illness. So I'm thrilled to have you here today. Can you take a minute, DAshley, introduce yourself, who you are, where you live, where
Yes,
you live, and what you do for a living?
absolutely. So my name is DAshley Wilson. I am a digital strategy consultant, and I live in the Hamptons currently. I am making my way back down to DC because that is where my heart is the happiest. But I am in this journey of being a healthier self and version of me. I came back to New York. I actually left DC because I was like a walking contradiction as far as taking care of my mental health went. And so I am here in East Hampton doing my thing, working on digital strategy, and sharing my story with others while I do so.
I love it. I love it. So I feel like I'm going to be a broken record, but like we met on Clubhouse, which is like the coolest thing. It's like the coolest new addiction people have.
Absolutely.
And we were just talking before we went live about how you were up until 4 a.m. on Clubhouse.
I was.
It's so common. But yeah, like, I'm so grateful. I feel like we were in a room, and I can't remember what room we were in, but you definitely shared something that resonated, and it was around the mental health space. And I was like, I have got to connect with you, and I'm so grateful that we, got together. We had our initial chat, and that you said, yeah, I'm willing to come on and talk about it. So thank you so much. Help everyone understand who you are. Like, share with us a little bit about your personal connection to mental health so that we can understand why you care about mental health and why it matters to you.
Absolutely. So let's see, I've lived quite the life, right? And all these experiences that I've had where I had to deal with a lot of traumatic experiences as a kid. And my dad passed away when I was 11 and a half, and he was like my best friend. He was my stable parent at the time. Growing up, I didn't have a great relationship with my biological mom. Not that we weren't, it's not that I didn't see her because of anything bad necessarily, but the type of work that she did, I rarely got to see her and spend time with her. So I grew up with a lot of anger, actually. And it caused me to be really cold. And after my dad passed away, that anger probably infinitely grew in size. And that coldness was like, I was like the original Elsa, was how I felt. And it took me a long time to recognize that it had, you know, caused issues for me. And it wasn't until I was about 17 where I was diagnosed with cyclothymia. And cyclothymia is a mood disorder. And I don't like to use the word disorder. I prefer to use the words disadvantage or obstacle,
Mhm.
and because disorder inherently says that there's something wrong, right? And that there's something
Right.
that needs to be fixed. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing that needs to be fixed.
Right.
And it's just a matter of your understanding of self and how you respond, react, and absorb what you're around.
Mhm.
And so I was on medicine for a while, and it did not work at all. I felt like a zombie. I didn't feel like myself. And so I stopped taking the medicine, and things further exacerbated the cyclothymia, and cyclothymia leads to bipolar. So about 20, 24, 25, I was in talk therapy again and with a psychiatrist, and was later diagnosed as having a bipolar disadvantage. And and that is why it means so much to me, because I spent so much time holding on to my feelings and not sharing them with anyone,
Mhm.
that I, you know, was hindering myself. And I felt like nobody really understood the feelings that I was going through. And so it wasn't worth talking about necessarily. And then I hated hearing like bipolar disorder. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
people are gonna think there's something wrong with me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to be on medicine my whole life. There's gonna like, there are all these things that, as a 17-year-old, you kind of compound all these thoughts. And
Yep.
before you know it, you are, on the roller coaster of depression and on the way down, not on the way
You
up.
DAshley, you raised such a really important topic. I'm a firm believer that words create our world, right? I believe that. You have to be really responsible with the words you choose. And you're getting me really present to how many mental illnesses have the word disorder in them. That is such a
A lot of them.
fundamental problem, like bipolar disorder, seasonal depression, seasonal affectiveness
Effective. Yep.
disorder. Isn't there major depression disorder? Like, why do we use that word disorder in every mental illness? Like, therein lies the problem.
It does. And I think a lot of it just has to do with society's refusal to extend grace to people who don't have the same process, right? And
Right.
because there's this like inherent idea that there's a such thing as normal, right? We have this thing where like, oh, well, that's normal. And truly normal is subjective. So what's normal to you may not be normal to me. And what's
Right.
normal to me doesn't have to be normal to my neighbor.
Right.
And those are things that I think, it's hard to combat those things, especially when you grow up and you go to school and you're taught these things. You're kind of exposed to these environments that push and further the notion that there's something wrong with you if you don't fall into the same parameters and boxes that they've created for everyone.
Yeah.
And as far as how personalities develop, grow, and identify.
You're really I like to say, be the change you want to see in the world. And you really are. Like, when we talk about removing the mental health stigma, it's like how you're showing up to people is so important to teaching them. It's almost like we have to re-educate society about how it is okay to not be okay, how it is okay to have something and thrive, have a mental health challenge and still thrive. So just want to applaud you, and I commend you for being the change, being the person who's like getting people to think about it differently. When we spoke before, you and I were talking about stress in the body, and you had like all this amazing information. Can you educate us, like you educated me a little bit about stress in the body and what you've learned over the years?
Yes, absolutely. So, actually, I have to give this to my older sister. She is the reason that I even know anything, right? So she one day said to me, she's like, you can't walk around with all this stress. You can't walk around with all these the like backpack full of rocks that cause you stress because it weighs you down, and you end up not able to comfortably walk through the things that you want to walk through. You end up like defeated almost in a way. And she's like, and if you look at the word disease, in it, it says dis-ease. It is all about discomfort, and stress is discomfort. Stress itself is a disease, but we don't even realize it because we're so constantly inundated with things, with connections, with responsibilities, with tasks, that you pick up stress naturally and you don't even recognize that it's stressful. And part of the reason that I even know any of this now also has to do with personally going through it. Of when I was under so much stress, my body shut down. I could not actually get up and go do the things that I needed to do. I
Mhm.
was stuck. I was like, you know, not able to eat food. I was so depressed that I couldn't figure out like what more to do. It's like everything that I looked at was just causing me more stress. And so I finally said, okay, I got to figure out why I'm so stressed. What is it that's happening that I am constantly accepting stress in my life?
Mhm.
Whether it's from work, whether it's from my relationship, whether it's from people, but where am I doing it to myself,
Mhm.
and recognizing that the stress is not necessary, basically. It's there's things that are going to be difficult. Yes, and we're going to face difficulties all the time, but the stressing over things that are going to pass, because that's life. It's a cycle. Everything passes, and it just hinders you, and it
Yeah.
takes more out of you. It takes more out of your spirit than you need to give necessarily. And I really caution people about how much stress they invite into their life, because it leads to other things. Like one of my dearest friends, her mom was such an angel and such a saint, and she took care of everyone, but she had so much stress from taking on that role that she developed a brain aneurysm, and she unfortunately passed away. And she was young.
Mhm.
This wasn't a woman who was like 82 years old. This was a woman in her 40s.
Wow.
So, recognizing that no matter what age you are, that stress that you put on yourself, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
And the ways that we deal with stress and we cope with it they have to be healthy. They have to be beneficial to self. When I was living in Virginia, my way of dealing with stress actually added more stress, because my goofy little self was like, I'm going to go shopping. I'm just going to go buy these things. And I was spending money that I really didn't have to spend, but it made me feel better for the 5 minutes. Right. And that was a part of my bipolar mania, was like, I live my life on this constant high, or
Yeah.
chasing this really, great feeling. And so I was like, well, I want to buy shoes because I'm still looking for that high. I want that feeling because that makes me feel like I'm not stressed.
Yeah.
But after I would go buy these shoes, or I would go spend money taking myself out to 18 different restaurants in a week, I was stressed
Yeah.
because I had to go pay my bills, and I'm looking like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to magically make this happen.
Yeah.
And, I was putting myself into situations where I caused myself way more stress, and then my body was shutting down, and I wasn't able to effectively, and I would say, patiently give myself what I needed and show up for myself, and also show up for others. You can't show up for others until you show up for yourself, because when you show up for them,
Yeah.
before you show up for you,
Yeah.
you're likely going to have some stress.
Yeah. You remind me of when I was a little girl, and my mother had bipolar, so I can relate when you're talking about the mania. And I just remember her being like almost like invisible, or invincible. That's the word,
Hmm.
invincible, when she was manic. And I remember going shopping with her and just going, oh my gosh, we must be rich. We must be rich. 'Cause she just spent like hundreds of dollars. Like I literally thought we must be rich. I mean, but to see her, like you said, like to see her in that sense of like happiness and fulfillment, that she had just gotten all this stuff, is amazing. I mean, I get it. So anyway, I can relate to that. But so tell us how you take care of yourself. What is your healthy routine, and what's your priority
So,
for managing stress?
uh, so what I found out, so there's one week I actually could not go to work. My body was just like done. And I worked at an in-house litigation office at a law
Mhm.
firm. And so I took the week off, basically, sat on my couch, and I started writing. I love to write. Writing is something that I've loved since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And I never realized how powerful it was when I first started writing. I
Mhm.
just did it to do it. And I just was like, okay, let me write. Let me get these
Mhm.
feelings out of my body. And I started creating this magazine. And I love Illustrator and InDesign and Photoshop. That's something that I've done also since childhood. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a magazine. I'm in the mood to make a magazine.
Nice.
And so I started creating this magazine, and I was like, I want to make a magazine about mental health awareness. And I'm just going to tell my stories. I'm just going to write different stories about lessons that I've learned over time that, you know, it took me some time to learn the lesson. I call it cosmic kindergarten. The universe kept sending me back to these same lessons because I refused to learn them. I refused to
Listen.
acknowledge them.
Yeah.
So once I started writing about them, that was me acknowledging them and sitting in that space and going, okay, there was clearly something that I was supposed to learn from this experience.
Mhm.
And maybe I don't get it now, but maybe I'll get it later. Let me just write down all that I'm feeling about the experience. So
Yeah.
that way, you know, I'm not carrying those feelings inside of my body anymore. I'm not holding on to this space that is not good for me, so to speak. So I write, and the other thing that I do is I dance and
Mhm.
I take photos. And another reason I've been stressed is because I was selling those parts of my abilities, right? I had been teaching dance class, I had been like freelancing as a photographer, and I was miserable doing it. And I couldn't figure out why I was so miserable doing things I'm passionate about. I was like, what is going on? Like, why do I hate going to this dance class? And I realized because I don't dance for others or to teach others, I actually dance for my spirit and for myself.
Yeah.
I dance when spirit tells me, hey, go shake off, like, go shake off some stress, go release this energy that you've been holding on to, or like you've got some excitement instead of going to a store and, spending thousands of dollars on unnecessary things. Go
Mhm.
outside and dance. Go get that energy out still and do it in a way that it's not going to, come back and be harmful to you. So I had
Mhm.
to really sit with myself and make the firm decision, okay, the things that I do for my spirit, they're for my spirit. And
Mhm.
I don't have to sell them. I know we live in a capitalist world, but I
Mhm.
don't have to sell
Yeah.
everything that I do.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm just gonna, I dance when I am in the mood, whether I'm in a good mood or I'm in a somber mood.
Yeah.
I dance, I listen to
Right.
music, and those are the ways that I cope with my stress. And I've made sure to cultivate a very strong circle of community and the people that I spend my time with and my friends and my family, and just making sure that I'm comfortable in speaking up to them, and that took a lot of time. I think that's probably like the last step in it is like really
Mhm.
developing a comfort in talking to other people while you're stressed.
Yeah.
And but the first thing that I do when I'm stressed is I talk to my journal. I write it down. I'm like,
I
okay,
love it.
these are the things that are stressing me
Love
out,
it. I
and this
love
is
it.
why.
Yeah.
And it's much easier, I feel like, afterwards.
Yeah, I love that. So I hope people are listening to what you're sharing. These are pearls because I feel like, the next question I have for you is really around the fact that when people keep it in, right? When people, so we talked before we came on the air about how oftentimes we get stuck in our head and automatically we're assuming that we are the only person that's dealing with things. And so I try really hard to remind people, especially now we're living through a pandemic, you really got to just give yourself grace. Um,
Mhm.
but you actually shared with me that you know that it can be heavy and actually exacerbate what you're feeling to not talk about it. Tell us more about that.
So I held a lot in, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Just not recognizing that I had the space to share what was weighing me down, and I felt like my life is so unique, my story is so unique. We all are.
Mhm.
We are all unique individuals and
Mhm.
individuals. So we each have a story. We each have something that's, special about every one of us. And in that, we also all are going to go through obstacles and challenges in life because that's a part of life. They're inevitable. Whatever, it doesn't matter what your class is, what your background is, there are obstacles that are going to be put in your place that you have to overcome. And I think a lot of times, like what happens is we get so attached to the uniqueness of our story that we don't think anyone else could possibly relate or possibly be going through this because there's no way that somebody else has had to experience this like that. And that's actually one of the reasons I love Clubhouse is because you get to find out how many people actually share this same experience with you, right? You get to find out that you really aren't alone.
Yeah.
But it is not easy to come to that space and recognition that you aren't alone. And I think part of the problem is that when we talk about it, a lot of people, sometimes they position it as like, oh, well, you could have it so much worse. Look at these people in that country, or look at this person over there. And it's like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this person and what's, plaguing them and what's upsetting their life balance. And it's important that we give them that space to say, you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. I may not necessarily be going through what you're going through actively.
Yeah.
But spiritually, I can still extend you grace and give you the space to share what it is that you feel you have to carry, right? So I said, like, we get these backpacks when we're little, and like, you get a backpack and you're allowed to put anything and everything you want inside of this backpack. And we have the tendency to sometimes collect rocks, and the rocks represent all of the things that weigh us down, all of the stressors, all of the negative comments that you've picked up in life that you may still hold on to because you heard it a couple times. Someone else might have said it again later on in your life, and you're like, nope, that's now a boulder. That was supposed to stay. And it is really hard to sit down, take the backpack off, go through it, unpack what's in there, and go, wait, I don't need these things. These are not the things that I need. Actually, I wrote about chaos soup, and I call it chaos soup because it has to do with a recipe for chaos that we all have in our life. And there are times where you don't realize, like I say, when I grew up, I didn't know the recipe that my parents made for the chaos soup, right? But I just knew that the soup was on the table, and I knew that I had to have the soup on the table. The meal wasn't finished unless this soup was also on the table with everything else. And I realized, as I'm walking through life, wait, this bowl of chaos soup, I don't even eat it. I don't need it. Why is it here? Why am I making chaos soup when I don't need to? But the, recognition of it and the attachment of it, because you recognize that chaos, you know what that is like, makes you comfortable in a way.
Yeah.
Right. Because you get comfortable with the way things don't work in your life sometimes, especially if it's been that way for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And I wrote about, it's okay to no longer eat chaos soup. And in fact, it's even better to no longer make it. You don't even have to make it. You don't even have to, put the pot on the oven. You don't have to do any of that.
I love it.
You can just move forward with the empty space of like, hey, you've got space for dessert. You've got space for an extra snack. You've got space for things that are going to actually refill your soul and refill your body, not the chaos that's brewing. You don't need it. There's so much chaos in the outside world that we can't control, and there's so many things that are going to happen that are out of our control. And it's important that we recognize what is in our control. And, serving chaos soup is something that we have an active choice in deciding whether or not we're going to do that.
Girl, gems, pure gems. I love.
I hope that was helpful.
Very, very much so. I feel like, when we're in Clubhouse and people are dropping bombs and like nuggets and gems, I'm just like blown away. You just dropped a really important one I think people will get. And you said something before I just want to go back to. You said, oftentimes when you're struggling, you have a loved one who says to you, well, the people are starving in third world countries. You really don't have it bad. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that people genuinely come from a good intention, and it lands for us in such a different way than it's intended. So we might have those loved ones that were in our low lows, and they're just trying to boost you up, right? They're trying to give you the pep talk, and they're coming from a good place, but it lands like you're diminishing me. So I think it's so important that you find your tribe you can be real with, and those are the ones you go to. I mean, would you agree? Then trying to sort of,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're the ones that are just, they're
Absolutely.
going to sit with you. They're going to hold your hand. They're going to sit with you during a
Yes.
prep.
You totally, absolutely. One of the things when I was an undergrad, you go off to college, you're in this new space, and you've got to start it all over again and building your community
Yeah.
and who's around you. And my first couple of friends, I, you know, I struggled to connect with on a level because they didn't understand bipolar disadvantages, and they kind of were shocked whenever I would say, "No, I'm struggling." It was like disbelief. They could not believe it. They refused to believe that there was any way I could possibly be struggling because, well, you do everything. I've never seen you look up. I what? No. And I remember saying like, "No, I'm having a hard time. Like the medicine that I'm on is messing with my body. I can't handle it. I need to do this instead. I have to do this." And then, I had other medicine that did help, but the side effects were awful.
Hmm.
And, it was, actually, I have ADHD. And I remember being friends with this one woman, and she wanted so badly for me to give her my medicine because she wanted to focus on stuff, and she's like, "Oh, but, like, what you have is, like, stronger than Adderall." It's like, "I wanna take it." And it's like, "Yeah, that's nice and all, but, go talk to a doctor. They'll give you some if you need it."
Yeah.
Which, if you can sit here and tell me all the reasons that you think you need it,
Yeah.
go sit in a room with a doctor, the psychiatrist, and tell them exactly what you're saying because there's nothing wrong with needing it. There's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with needing some help, and I say that very proudly because I was not always a person that asked for help. I'd not always opened my mouth, but something my mom, my biological mom, always said to me when I was younger. If I was upset about something, I never said anything. She'd be like, "Well, closed mouths don't get fed. If you don't tell me what you need or what you want, I can't give it to you. I
Yeah.
can't help you."
Yeah.
And that's something that, that's a lot of the reason why I say find people that you can comfortably share with, right?
Hmm.
Because thankfully, in those same years, my core group of friends, I could go to them and be like, "Guys, I'm having such a hard time right now, and I don't know why," but it didn't matter. They just let me get those feelings out, and it's important, also as listeners to just listen. Someone is not always coming to you for advice on how to live their life or what to do. They're just coming to literally dump all of those things out of their spirit because it's been plaguing them and they're
Yeah.
finally ready to let it go. So when you're met with, unsolicited advice or unsolicited comments about how people in other countries are struggling and therefore you should just be grateful, it actually makes it harder to be
Yeah.
grateful and to
Yeah.
practice the gratitude that they're encouraging you to
Yeah.
practice.
I
And
agree.
I have a thing with, I love that you brought up intentions, right? Because it was with good intention that they did it, but the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Our intentions have to be mindful. You have to be thoughtful in your intention space. It can't just be, that you're speaking to speak or you're, making a decision that you didn't really give much thought to, but it sounded good when it first popped into your brain. You're like, "Oh, that sounds great. Let me go do that." But you didn't think about the rest of what happens with that. We don't always think about the consequences of what we do in life. And people get, uncomfortable with the words like consequence.
Yeah.
Consequences are awesome because there's good ones, great ones, and there's bad ones. But they're not all bad.
Yeah.
Not every result is going to be a bad one. And that's what a consequence is. It's the result of an action. You
Mhm.
don't have to put yourself in a space where you're you know, constantly on the receiving end of negative consequences.
Yeah.
You're allowed to actually enjoy life. You're allowed to enjoy the spaces that you're in. And I will even dare to say that you're allowed to enjoy your depression for the time that you are sitting in it. Because
Yeah.
there are times where, like, I remember no, I don't want to do the things that people are saying are going to make me feel. I don't want to get out of my bed and dance. I want to sit and wallow in these feelings right now because this is how I feel. This is what's happening for my spirit. And I think it's important that we allow people to feel those feelings. So when we, tell them someone else in this country has it way worse than you, you're minimizing those feelings that they're having.
Right.
And it's important for them to feel them so that they can then let them go. The most important part is to let the feelings go.
Yeah.
Think of yourself and your body like, think of the ocean. You think of feelings like waves. Allow them to crash up to shore and let them go. They're going to go right back out. But yes, feel it when they crash. Sometimes it crashes heavy. You can feel it. You're allowed to. You don't have to always be cheery and always be happy.
Yeah.
You are entitled to every emotion you feel in this place, like in this world. So that is
amazing.
That's what I got to say.
You had so much nugget, so many beautiful nuggets, DAshley. Thank you so much. But as we slowly start to come to a conclusion with our show today, I'm so grateful that you're here. Do you have any other thoughts or words of wisdom? And then I'm going to take us back to the ask. We have an ask of everyone, and it is around our terminology that I want to close us out with. But any other words of advice for someone out there maybe who struggles, or just what you want people to know about mental health and mental illness?
I want people to be patient. That is, patient and graceful, whether you are the one extending the patience and grace, or like to others or to yourself. Just really understanding that it's okay. You are okay. You are going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need someone to talk to, I'm always here. When I write my magazine and I write my stories, that's one of the things that I always end with. If you need a listening ear, or you want some personal advice, you want to share your story, I am so happy to sit and listen, because sometimes that's all we need is just for someone to sit and listen.
Wow.
And I'm happy to be that person.
I love
that
it.
Is my advice.
I love it. And there's a saying, right? There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's to listen, right?
Yes.
So our ask. So I think you and I join hands in this ask, and that is being mindful with what we're calling our mental illnesses. So if we can move away from the term disorder and then call it a disadvantage, think about the power that could have, right?
Absolutely.
I love that.
I love that.
Thank you for bringing that. No, thank you big time for bringing that to the surface, that when we're relating to a mental illness as a disorder, it's a very disempowering term. So thank you for highlighting that. How do people connect with you and get in touch with you, and maybe even like your magazine? Like, gosh, how do people get in touch with you?
So I am Dash with 2 H's with Cash. It's literally like double letters on all of those things. So DASHHWIF as in Frank, F, so FF, Cash, and on Instagram. And also that's my Facebook handle also, and as well. And you can go to Digital Dash with 2 H's if you're interested in my mental health awareness magazine. But you can also connect with me through my organization, Wilson Wheelhouse, and I'm happy to send you to the magazine site and share it with you as well. Right now, I do have it where the magazine has a cost associated with it, and that's something that I just recently did, and has to do with, empowering myself.
Nice.
If you cannot afford to buy a copy of the magazine, I will send it to you. It's a PDF. It's not the, I don't have to hold it under lock and key if someone is looking for gems and they're in the space that they need it. I'm so happy to share. So those are the best ways to connect. I also say connect with me on Clubhouse if you guys get on Clubhouse.
Yes, I want all my Clubhouse followers to follow you, because you drop some pearls in those rooms, and they need to follow you. So thank you so much for being here, DAshley. Thanks for giving me some of your time today, and for all that you shared with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have me. I'm always like enamored and amazed with everyone else and what they do. And I literally, I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She's doing exactly what my heart has been trying to get other people to see. Like, let's challenge this stigma. Let's make sure that people are being supportive and they're being understanding about mental health and what it means. So thank you so much for having these conversations, because they do matter. And the more we have them, the better we'll be. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, DAshley. All right. I will see you in Clubhouse.
Yes, you will. I'll see you in the Clubhouse.
Bye.